wonderful people across the globe. We are just getting hotter here at the GLF Bonn Digital Conference. We are so happy to have you. We would want to say thank you wherever you are for joining in this groundbreaking event. And we are also saying another thank you to the GLF and the entire GLF technical team for putting such an amazing package together. That's a very wonderful thing you're doing. Now and in the future, we are all very likely to be staying home much more than usual as we carry forward lessons from quarantine demanded by this panic and start cutting back on flying. Is that using more digital tools to travel across the globe. So let's look now at virtual reality, one of the most powerful tools we have to do this, embedding us in a faraway landscape and communities without ever having to leave our bedrooms. Interestingly, what GLF Bonn Digital Conference has sought to do these past days is to give you a virtual tour around the world. Yes, we've given you a virtual plane ticket to travel all the way to the mangrove forest and to very amazing places across the globe. And we would want to continue with this conversation with no other person than Viktorija, the senior producer at Al Jazeera Contrast, a virtual reality platform. And she will now share with us how she and her team are using this technology to make stories of climate change visceral and experiential, taking us to the palm oil plantations of Malaysia or the famine-stricken regions of Nigeria, feeling the weight of these times for the people living there. Let's welcome Viktorija.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for the kind introduction, Daniel.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much. So I'm Gabrielle Lipton, the editor of Landscape News with the Global Landscapes Forum. I'm not Viktorija. She's going to join us in just a sec. I will expand on Daniel's lovely introduction to say that this session is part of the storytelling track that's been running throughout the conference. And as we start off the last day of this track, we're going to start looking at technology's role in storytelling. So far, we've heard from a number of journalists and authors and editors and a linguist. But today we're going to spend the end of this conference looking at how new devices, as well as the internet, are really transforming our means of storytelling to be more connecting and to have greater impact through the empathy and understanding that occurs when we are better connected. So we're starting this now with virtual reality and 360-degree storytelling, which is when, whether it's through a headset or your computer screen or swiping around on your phone, you're really dropped into a place. You're able to look around a village or a home or a reef underwater. And this can be a really powerful way to understand what it's like to be in a place where there's drought or there's famine or storms or pervasive land degradation. So we're really lucky to have one of the best in this field with us today. Her name is Viktorija Mickute. She's a senior producer from Contrast, which is a platform from Al Jazeera, and it's been nominated for an Emmy, as well as won a number of prestigious awards, including 2 Webbies for Best Virtual Reality Series and Online Journalism Awards for Excellence in Immersive Storytelling, and 3 Telly Awards for Immersive Documentary. And one of the most impressive parts of Al Jazeera Contrast work is its diversity and its inclusivity in the stories that it tells and the inclusion of voices in its reporting process. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Viktorija, who's going to walk us through how this work is made. Welcome, Viktorija.
Thank you so much, Gabrielle, for this lovely introduction. And thank you so much for inviting me to the conference. And thank you all for joining during these difficult times. It's amazing to have this kind of conference, digital conference, and to connect with each other from like these places from all around the world. So I'm very excited to be part of this. A little bit about myself. My name is Viktorija Mickute, and I am originally from Lithuania. I've been working in media for more than 9 years in different fields, from traditional journalism, newsrooms, foreign news editing, foreign news reporting, to social media and documentary filmmaking, and currently immersive technologies and virtual reality as well. And I'm currently based in New York City, and I am a senior producer at AG Contrast, which is Al Jazeera's immersive storytelling and media innovation studio. And if anybody is not very familiar with Al Jazeera, it's one of the largest and most diverse newsrooms and media operations in the world. So I want to share my screen a bit to show you some images and photos from our stories. Just a second. So here we are. This is Al Jazeera Contrast, and we are a very small studio. It was established in May 2017, and the idea was to use cutting-edge technologies to amplify stories of underrepresented communities hit hardest by conflict and inequality. And some of the main editorial principles that drive our work are collaboration and co-creation. So the idea is that we work with the people who are struggling with those issues every day, who are living those stories. And we collaborate together with the community to tell stories together. So the stories we tell, no matter what story we choose to tell, it's not about the communities, but it's with the communities, because we believe that diversity is essential for authentic storytelling. And some of the things that we've been doing is we've been training journalists and local storytellers around the globe in 360-degree storytelling, in immersive storytelling, so they could be a part of this process and we could do this all together. We've been doing these creator initiatives around the world. They're called My People, Our Stories, that we train people to tell, let's say, stories in favelas, from favelas in Rio de Janeiro. Or we did a story in Yemen also, where we trained filmmakers, journalists, to actually film in 360 and tell their stories through this medium. In South Sudan, we trained the journalists. In Los Angeles, we trained together with USC Annenberg journalism class. We trained a local homeless population to tell stories as well from their own perspectives. So this is something that we really believe helps to amplify the voices of the underrepresented communities around the world. And when talking about environmental stories and climate justice stories or food insecurity stories, I think some of the biggest challenges as communicators that we face is proximity and scale. So many times the viewers are telling, or the audience is telling, the story is so far away, it doesn't affect me. How does this affect that something is happening, maybe it's happening somewhere far away? And how to explain to people that it is actually happening right now, and it's happening in the scale that sometimes we don't even see every day. And how to connect that what happens to some communities currently, your actions might affect those communities directly. So I want to show one of the stories it's called The Curse of Palm Oil, virtual documentary about how palm oil industry impacts local indigenous communities in Malaysia. Because of the rampant deforestation there, it's their home, which is forest, is being destroyed. And we traveled to Malaysia to tell this story. So let's take a look.
When I go to the forest, I find harmony. I can hear birds, monkeys, and squirrels. There used to be elephants and other animals like tigers. Sometimes we are frustrated, sometimes we're angry. It crushes our hearts. Humans have minds and hearts. Why
Yes. So the question is, I want to go back. Here you go. So the question is, did VR help to tell us this story? And the answer is definitely yes, because it helped us to document the space and the processes that are happening in that space. And we saw in the short clip that I showed you, we saw the forest, we saw deforestation, and we saw the people who are facing that issue each day. And other thing that virtual reality helped us to do is it took the viewer closer or even directly to the center of the story. So basically that idea that something is very far away and it's difficult to travel, and it's true because of financial constraints, because of time constraints, not many people can travel to these faraway places where we can see the climate change actually happening every second. So virtual reality helps us to almost transport the viewer to that story, transport the viewer to that location, so that they can see up close with their own eyes what that change is does actually look like. And then virtual reality also gives an opportunity to spend time with real people in their surroundings, so that we can see that these are communities that are actually facing real consequences. And also, for example, what happened in the Curse of Palm Oil, because it's connected to the palm oil industry and we learn how palm oil industry affects people. Actually, I heard from the audience that when they watched the documentary, they felt like they should do something to be included in the change. In a sense, can we change what we eat? Can we change what we consume? Because now we see that we spend time with those people and we see how those people are struggling, and we see that our actions actually affect the communities that are really far away, but live with those issues every day. So then how do we choose the story for VR, and what is the best story to tell in virtual reality? So it's very important to find an interesting location, and location that is visual, and the story itself that is visual and involves action, because we want the viewer to be immersed and really connect to the story, be interested in the visuals that are happening. But also, one of the most important things is to find the right characters who will guide the viewer through the location, through their story, through their issue, and sort of invite the viewer to that situation and be, a companion for those 7 minutes or 8 minutes of the virtual reality or 360 story. So I want to show another example. It's a story from Northeast Nigeria about food insecurity there. And we wanted to show, we decided to show the story through the lens of three women living in internally displaced camp. And because we wanted them to be the guides through the camp and their lives.
Surolan ya baba biamdi maba ya ander ya anda sauri kullum bulum burin su so shimaden.
Yagana used to be a farmer. Now, like most IDP.
So we can see we're actually walking with them through the camp. We're spending time with those women in the camp and learning about the situation,
labor and community support to feed.
And one of the things when we choose virtual reality, it's a very visual medium, and it's sort of it's not an easy medium to tell the story in, because it's short. Like the stories that we tell are, let's say, around 8 minutes, because people might get tired of virtual reality on the headset, so we need to be aware of that. And when it's environmental story, when it's a climate change story, food insecure story, the issues most of the time are very complex, and the issues involve a lot of other angles, such as migration, or how it affects community psychologically, how it affects the job markets and all that. There's so many angles that connect. It's not only the story about the change of climate, it's also a story about the community and how they are dealing with it and how it affects them. So how to deal with that complexity and how to deal with the issue of science also based behind it, because many times we have difficulties with that as well. So one of the things we need to be very mindful of, how to translate data and science into compelling and simple language. So one of the examples that I like to talk about is once I asked the researcher to explain me a little bit in a more simple way about the temperature change. And this is, you see on the screen, the answer that I received. And definitely it was not that I can put something on in the documentary and as visual as 360-degree documentary. So I needed to find a way to talk with the scientist to understand actually what's going on and put it in a very simple way so that people would connect to the story and would not get sort of overwhelmed by information. And then also, we need to find the way to present information in a visual and different way in the 360 space, again, so that people would be interested in watching it unfolding around them in immersive space. So this is another example I want to show. We filmed the story in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, and this is a story about waste mismanagement and food waste in Brazil. And again, the issue is very complex is big. So what we did, we used animation to explain the issue, sort of to create these graphics and infographics. And one of the characters in the story narrated that part to connect to the viewer directly.
Brazil produces and exports a lot of food. In fact, it is one of the largest suppliers of agricultural products in the world, third only to the European Union and the United States. In the US and other developed countries, consumers buy more food than they can eat, so they end up throwing a lot away. Here in Brazil, like other developing countries, a significant amount of food is lost before it even reaches supermarkets and homes. For example, from all the fruits and vegetables that go to waste in Brazil, around 50% are lost while being transported and handled. This is due to poor infrastructure, inadequate logistics, and often simply because of a lack of training and awareness. This is a story of how other Brazilians and I, Rodrigo Sardinha, are trying to change the culture of food wastage by finding ways to make use of what would have ended up in the trash. Maria and Rosenberg, along.
And so, no matter what we do, no matter what technology we choose to tell the story in, whether it's virtual reality or any other immersive technology or any other medium in general, what I want to stress again, how important is the community and how important it is to spend time with them and learn from the people on the ground and collaborate with them to tell the story together. So for example, also when we're talking about the climate justice stories, so many times, even the audience are saying like, we hear only about bad things, but what can we do? What is the solutions? Where is the hope? And I think it's important when we tell climate change stories or when we talk also about the crises, that we include the solutions that the community has found already or is working on. Because these people on the ground are the experts of that issue, because they've been dealing with that issue every single day. And for example, in the story in Morocco, which we see the pictures from that story in Southeast Morocco, we traveled to document the desertification. We spend hours drinking Moroccan tea with the people, with different generations, to understand what I read in the research papers, what I talked with the researchers and scientists, what is actually happening on the ground and what people are doing to survive and what do they want from the world. So for example, they're planting the palm trees to stop desertification, and also they're asking the world to pay attention, because they're saying that they don't cause the change, but they have to live with the consequences. So just the last example from this documentary to show how, the community and how we spend time with them. Here we go. Hopefully this works.
وبداك الماء يمكن ليه 4 شهور ما تشرب ولا 5 شهور.
الا ما كانش عندي السعفانه ما كاينه
هذا كيشد غير بعدا الروح وصافي.
لا انا مزيان شدته.
والواحه هي بحال قلتي داك لا فرونتيير اللي باقي شاده الرمله. راه الا مشات هذه الواحه الرمله غتوصل تطلع وتفوت الاطلس. العنصر اللي يمكن يساعدنا مثلا هذا التصحر وهذا الشيء هو الحضور الإنساني، يعني العنصر الإنساني ضروري يكون موجود. بحال الميليتير كتخوي الجبهة هذاك العدو كيخوي لك البلاصة، غير كتخوي ليه هو كيجي هو قوي عليك. كيفاش يمكن نفكروا المستقبل، كيفاش يمكن نلقاو هذه الحلول هذه، وربما الى ما كان فيها تكاتف الجهود وفكرنا في هاد الناس راه غادي تمشي الواحه ونمشيو حنا.
And the last thing I want to say before we head to the Q&A, and we can discuss the issues that you want to ask or want to talk about, is that it's important to continue telling the story beyond virtual reality. And what we do at AJ Contrast, we create these social media campaigns for Twitter, Instagram, or any other social media channel so that the story could reach as many people as possible, and we could continue the conversation. This way we can include even more people into the story, even more activists, more community, and to sort of include more context and to discuss these things together, and to make sure that the story that story just wouldn't be lost in some virtual reality world, but it actually becomes a conversation starter, and to discuss what change could be done in the world, and to connect with the people who can actually affect that change with their decisions and policies. So that would be all from me. Gabrielle?
Hi, Viktorija. Thank you so much for that amazing presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the Moroccan music at the end as well. So thank you so much for sharing your incredible work. We have a couple questions from the audience. So the first is coming from an audience member who's asking about how you get these documentaries and the work that you're doing out into the world. Obviously, Al Jazeera is a very big news platform. You have enormous reach, but I'm wondering, and perhaps this audience member is wondering as well, what the role of technology plays kind of to the detriment of the spread of this. Like if people don't have proper phones, if they don't have proper internet or ways to view this, how is that affecting your work?
Yeah. So definitely we understand the challenges of distributing virtual reality. And I think that's why important was my last point in terms of that we have to always think how to tell that story beyond virtual reality, not to get stuck just that we made that documentary and it lives only in that medium, because it's true. It's still not many people can access it in a way that it's meant to be watched, right, in virtual reality headset. That's why we also create, a lot of images or even linear video next to it, like create some sort of Instagram stories, something that could connect those people that might not have the needed equipment, but they could still learn that story. They could still be a part of that conversation that we are having. And one other thing that is super important for us is that to bring that technology actually to those communities, to include them into that process. So for example, with another Nigerian documentary from Nigeria, Oil in Our Creeks, what we did that we actually organized a screening in Lagos for the community to be able to see the story. So sort of the idea to bring the virtual reality documentary back to the community. So instead that not only the people who have access in mostly, more developed world can watch those stories, but actually people where the story came from could be a part of that process as well.
Absolutely. That's really beautiful and really important. And I'm wondering what it's like when people see these films that you've made about their communities, and when you're incorporating the science and maybe things they didn't even know was happening to them, you're then feeding that back to them through your work. What is it like for them to see your work?
I think the most rewarding experience is to see how it inspires storytellers and local filmmakers to actually look for these new ways to tell stories. For example, when we were doing the training in South Sudan, journalists were so excited, and they kept telling us that this 360 medium that we are sort of teaching them and giving them opportunity to tell their stories in this medium, that it's going to help them so much. And they felt like it's going to help them document the things that are happening in their country and sort of, document it in what they were saying, and maybe even in a more objective way, in a sense that documented everything, all the things around happening at the same time, without choosing what frame to choose at that specific moment. And, a lot of people say they get inspired, and they get inspired to be a part of that process. They don't feel excluded, they feel included, and they feel like they can contribute with their own stories as well.
There's another question coming from Laura Mukwana that I think dovetails on that perfectly. Laura is asking, how does someone start doing work in VR and making the kind of documentaries that you make? Maybe you can also describe a bit about your story, how you got into this medium.
Yes. So I was, I was doing documentary filmmaking. I studied photojournalism at university in the US. And then while I was doing documentaries, I was thinking that I want to look for different ways to tell stories. There has to be something beyond. There has to be something new, or something that could maybe be even more impactful. And not for all stories. We can't tell every story in 360 degrees, that's for sure. But some stories are, could really work in that medium. And that's why I started looking into it. And then when I found it, it just fascinated me in a way that I always wanted to bring the viewer to that story. That's, as a storyteller, as a communicator, I wanted people to be as close to those other people that are struggling with the issues as possible. So this sort of gave me that opportunity to transport the viewers and connect viewers from different parts of the world to sort of in one space. And I think the most important thing is being curious about the technology. It's changing every day. So we cannot get stuck in what we learn one day. We have to always keep moving with the technology and see what other new things we can incorporate in our work. And I think what's beautiful about 360 degree now is that it's not that complicated to get into it. It's, there are quite affordable cameras that are possible to purchase online, and more and more, and social media is connected now that supports 360 degree videos, which we can post online and we can share and reshare, and the internet is getting faster. So I think, but we should continue thinking about what are other ways, how can I do even more, That's very important with regards to technology.
For sure. And I think the last question, and the question that we can perhaps end on, we have a former documentary filmmaker from Florida, Melissa, is asking, is this the future of journalism? And I think we could expand that out. I mean, you and I are talking across the world now, and in a way, we're in each other's rooms. How do you see virtual reality playing a role in the future of journalism, in the future of conferencing, in the future of offices and working from home? What role do you see this technology playing more broadly?
I think this technology has become sort of, we already using it, and there are a lot of people who know how to use it, and we should expand the community, and we should keep expanding the community. But I think what's important to understand that it's not necessarily the only future that we're going to have, but it will become a part of the future. So definitely in the ways that it could help us, we should be using it. But we should also think about it as one aspect of the work we're doing, how to maybe collect these sort of packages of different mediums that we're using to tell the story, how to create these sort of campaigns, initiatives that use virtual reality, use something else, connect to be more, to look at everything more holistically, and in a sense that include even more context, and to use virtual reality as part of it, not maybe the only thing and not the most maybe important thing. That's something that we should be using when it's powerful to use. So I think it's going to stay. We'll see how it's going to evolve in a sense, whether we're going to have everybody at home in virtual reality headsets, whether or not. But I think it's there to stay. And we just need to make sure as storytellers and those who choose to tell stories in this medium, that we choose the stories to tell that are impactfully told in this medium, that we don't just use this medium for everything, but we actually curate the stories and produce very high quality content so the viewers are excited to get into those stories, get into that headset and watch, spend time with the people.
Mm-hmm. That's so beautiful. And I can't wait to maybe one day talk to you in a VR headset.
Yes, that could be possible.
But thank you so much for sharing your work. It was such a pleasure and so informative. And I'm sure that our audience, there are a number of young communicators and journalists in it. I'm sure that they really gleaned a lot from this conversation. So thank you for taking the time and sharing your work. And I encourage everyone to go to AJ Contrast, check out their website. You can watch the films online. It's really, really incredible, powerful work. So I encourage everyone to take a look. And thank you so much, Viktorija.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, the organizers and the audience as well, for joining us from all around the world.
Great.